So there are 5 of them, and the 6th Doctor Who will be Colin Baker, and he's with me. We'll be talking more about his role in a few minutes. But having made the headlines himself over the what we've done, we've invited Colin to take a look through this morning's papers. Just let me draw a few headlines for you. The Times and the Morning Star both focus on government plans to cut the benefits paid to young, unemployed people. The Telegraph and the Guardian lead on the killing of the Philippines opposition leader as he was returning to Manila after 3 years' exile in America. And several of popular papers speculate on the visit to Balmoral this weekend by Sophie Birdwood. She's the new name to remember. Sophie Birdwood, a former Deb of the Year. Right, Colin. We'll talk about Doctor Who in just a moment. What have you picked out for us this morning?
Right, well, the first thing that I noticed is that Mats Wilander, the Swedish tennis player, managed to beat John McEnroe in the Association of Tennis Pros Championship in Ohio. And that's particularly pleasing, being a tennis fan, to know that there are other people coming up who can actually cope with the McEnroes and the Connors.
It's part of your pleasure seeing McEnroe get his comeuppance?
I must confess it is true, yes. I speak as someone who, in the past, have always had people wanting me to have my comeuppance in various TV programmes. So
we're going to show it to the brothers in a moment, yes.
But yes, of course, on the one hand you admire McEnroe because of that single-minded determination.
Yes, people say his tennis just overcomes everything, really, and
occasionally he just does alienate me as a spectator.
Okay, so he's had his comeuppance. What else do we have?
The thing that you can't avoid seeing today is about the world's fittest man we've got here in the Mail. This appalling man who makes the rest of us look exactly what we are, which is unfit, useless specimens, who, being a little bored after running across the top of the Himalayas, decided he'd enter this quadrathon terror, which took place yesterday, in which he... Now, where are we? A 50-kilometre walk, a 2-mile sea swim, a 100-mile cycle ride, and then around Brands Hatch, and then a final 26.2-mile marathon to Gravesend.
Some were carried off before it really started, weren't they?
I was carried off reading it. It's appalling. I think it's wonderful. I wish I was a millionth as fit as he is.
Nessie. I mean, it's really a high summer season, isn't it? I mean, we can't get away from Nessie.
There she
is. What has
again.
happened this time? They haven't found her by some.
We always say she, don't we, for Nessie? I don't know why. It's because of the E at the end. Once again, there is a team of scientists up there trying to find if she's really there.
There are crowds of them. Have you seen the films of them? They all got various methods, and the place is infested with Nessie watchers.
They've got sonar soundings, things like that. I've always been a sort of Nessie believer. In a way, I think it'd be rather disappointing if they do find out that there is a Nessie, because it'll either turn out to be less spectacular than we always hoped,
yes,
or not quite as interesting. But the article today in the Star is that the Nessie hunters have been attacked by a petrol bomb. During the night, someone hurled a petrol bomb at their boat. I can't imagine who would have a vested interest in preventing people discovering.
For your next story, you've gone back to sport and this wonderful juxtaposition of...
Yes, the papers have been very naughty. They have published 2 pictures, one of Shireen Bailey, the British athlete, and one of Yarmila Kratochvilova.
Well done.
I'm extremely proud of having said that. And the picture they show of Shireen is the demure, feminine picture of the lady she probably is. And there is Yarmila, who does look frightfully strong, doesn't she?
Let's put it this way, she hasn't got a lot going for her, has she? I mean, and when you say they've selected the picture, if you watch the coverage of the athletics yesterday, she does look pretty much like that all the time, doesn't she? It's hardly difficult to select the sort of typical photograph.
It's very true. I mean, she's a superb athlete, no questioning it, but without doubt she has got her certificate and poor old Shireen didn't.
Yes.
And, there's the hub of the story.
Yes, fine. Well, let's turn now to Doctor Who. Congratulations, first of all, because, I mean, you've really joined an institution, haven't you?
It's a bit like Biggles or Just William or Dan Dare, isn't it?
Yes. Now, we've just seen, before we began the papers, the 5, and they've all presented their Doctor Who's in different ways. Have you any idea what sort of a Doctor Who you're going to give us?
We have talked about it. The danger now, in my saying too much, is that when it comes out, it's always not like that at all. To continue the tradition of making him as quirky, eccentric as possible, inject a little acid humour occasionally, perhaps. I think what the producers try and do with Doctor Who is to use as much of the actor's own personality as possible, because it's such a high density rehearsal and performance rate that you don't have much time to go out on a limb.
Is it a part that actors seek after? Because when I said it's an institution, it is worldwide. There are fan clubs everywhere. I mean, it is such an established place now. After 20 years it's been running, one of the longest running shows in Britain. Is it a part that you relish tackling?
Oh, yes. It's very exciting. I mean, there is no other part like it, because there are no other parts where you actually play the same part as somebody else in a television series that's already been created.
Are you going to be a nice Doctor Who?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah. Well, Doctor Who must be nice.
Because you're not famous for being nice in your films.
No, that's true. Nice doesn't mean necessarily soft.
Yeah.
I think it's important that Doctor Who can be a bit spiky sometimes.
But I've only met you for the first time today, and you appear to me to be a charming chap. But of course, people regard actors who play nasty parts as nasty people, don't they?
Yes.
I mean, haven't people hit you with brollies and come up to you into the street after the brothers?
Yes, it's true. It all started when the very first television I ever did was a series called Roads to Freedom, the Sartre trilogy. And I played a rapist in that. Yeah. And as a result thereafter, I always got the nasty part.
Fine. Well, we just want to remind people how nasty you can be, because you may well be set to blast off as the sixth Time Lord in Doctor Who. But of course, still, many people remember you as that brutal businessman, Paul Merroney. Do you remember, in The Brothers? Now, in this clip, we see you having a bit of a go with Brian about a proposed new business deal in Turkey. Here we go.
Well, you've made out a pretty strong case for the pro side. That is a memo listing a few of the cons.
What do you want me to do with this?
Just read it, think about it. I'm going to have it photocopied before the board meeting, so if you have any comments to make... Something funny?
No, of course not, no. But you are scraping the barrel a bit just down at the end here, aren't you? Political situation. You have inside information on the political situation.
No, I haven't. Paul, I know that Turkey is part of NATO and all that, but it isn't exactly France or Belgium, is it? And suppose there is another recession. Suppose the guest workers in West Germany are sent home to Turkey. They arrive there, they're on the dole. There's a revolution. They could nationalize everything overnight. Look at Cuba.
And, bandits.
Yes, I've been talking to a chap who's just been there.
I've just been there.
Paul, you may not happen to have met any, but there are bandits in that desert.
Brian, there are thieves in any country. Now, you can stick an exotic name on them if it makes your flesh creep. But I dare say they're no more effective than our native British villains, if not less so.
That is exactly my point. Here we know the hazards, we know the ropes. There we know nothing.
Brian, it is going to be a lot of hard work. Does the prospect frighten you?
It isn't the work, I've told you that. It's the risk. It's the incalculable.
Do you think if Hammonds doesn't do this job, it'll remain undone?
No, somebody will do it, no doubt.
In spite of the incalculables and the risk and the heat and the labour problems and the, bandits, somebody will do it. And that somebody will get a license to print money.
I've suddenly started hating you seeing that. But anyway, perhaps you will now bury Paul Merroney, will you?
I hope so,
yes
finally.
Tom Baker played Doctor Who for 7 years. Do you see at least 7 years' employment ahead?
I hope I've got hundreds of years' employment ahead, whether it's in Doctor Who or not, on the BBC, really.
Well, we wish you well. You're going to be immensely famous, and fans and all that. I hope very much you can cope with that. I mean, you really have not had a lot of that, have you, until this particular...
There was a certain amount from the brothers, particularly overseas, funny enough, in Sweden, Holland and Israel. They were the three countries where we were treated as demigods, almost.
How much of it yourself are you going to put into the part? Because, I mean, I read that the producer wants an eccentric Doctor Who again. I mean, Peter Davison, who we had here, charming man. He played it very gently and in the cricket sweater and so on. So really, you're going to be produced in a way, aren't you? In a way, perhaps the others haven't been.
Hopefully it'll be a combination of my ideas and their ideas, and a lot of it depends on scripts, of course, and people have to write the scripts before you can do it. But yes, an edge, I think, is a word that
yes.
I think is useful to you.
That's the sort of Paul Merroney part, in a sense, isn't it? I mean, there's a lovely edge in that for an actor.
Yes. Yeah, that was a wonderful part to play. It was such fun.
Can you explain to me why Doctor Who is such a success? Have you thought about it since you got the part? What is it that
Until you asked me that question,
millions of people?
It is one of those things that somehow got into almost sort of current mythology. You do bracket him with the sort of great folk heroes of literature. And it was, I think, the first of the science fiction, if it can be so called, programs on television. It transcends the age gap.
Yes.
Children love it, adults love it.
It's funny, you have to remember that way back, it started as a kind of scientific instructional program in a curious kind of way, and then became very much an actor's vehicle and an entertainment.
Yes. I don't really think they were trying very hard to be scientific. and instructing at the beginning. I've been watching some of the earlier recordings.
Yeah.
They all stand up so frightfully well.
They do,
it's
don't they?
amazing.
Yes.
And they're all so different.
We've had Cybermen and we've had Daleks. We had a Dalek here on breakfast time one morning. Do you see any other plans for new kind of creatures coming up in the new series?
I would hope so. They always seem to find something new.
Yeah.
But I'd be very disappointed if over the next year or so I don't meet a Dalek.
Fine. Now, when do you actually start work? I mean, do you know when that happens?
December, January, I do the first block of 4 episodes, which are screened at the end of Peter Davison's current stint, which are in the middle of March. Yeah. And then there's a sort of long gap. But at least they've broken the usual tradition where they have a transfer of Doctor at the end of a series, and then
Yes.
you have to wait an awful long time before you see the new one. But they get me straight away.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much indeed for that, and for doing the papers, and we'll have another bash at you with Sue Cook a little later on, about 8:30.
You looked at the papers earlier on for us, and you found mostly sporting stories, I noticed, so you're obviously a sporting person.
A watcher, rather than much of a doer, I'm ashamed to say. I do play a little tennis.
And what about this lot of stories you've looked at this time? Are they sporting as
well? Not as much, no. I think probably it would be irresponsible at the moment to talk about the papers at all without mentioning the fact that there is an appalling spate of violence, and particularly against those who are least able to defend themselves. I'm talking particularly about children.
Children and old people, suddenly,
yes. I mean, violence of any kind is appalling, but it's so unthinkable that anyone can lack the simple human imagination to think beyond the first desire to do what they do, which may be caused by all sorts of background reasons we don't know about.
But the difficult thing is that things seem to go in fashions. There's one type of crime, and then everybody seems to copy it, and you wonder whether you should talk about it at all.
That's the danger in even bringing it up now. But I would hate people to think that we weren't concerned about it, because of course everybody is. That said, we're in the silly season, so a letter in the Times, which there's always a letter in the Times, but this particular one, which interested me, was from Dr. Passmore in Surrey. Sir, when I was in general practice in Kensington during the Blitz, I received a postcard from an evacuated patient which read, I have heard you have perished in an air raid, but if you are still alive, will you please send me a repeat prescription for my sleeping tablets?
Wonderful.
That's wonderful. Intimations of mortality, the headline is.
I think he needs a prescription for something else, probably.
Self-interest rules, as always, isn't it? In the diary, in the Mirror, I noticed a little item about an actor friend of mine, Patrick Mower, who very cunningly got a little dig into his entry in Who's Who in television by naming, in the following manner, somebody who owed him some money. He revealed that the person he would most like to meet, and I won't name the actor, was the actor who owed him £500.
One way of it being...
Free publicity. Wonderful.
I suppose you could be sued for libel or something.
That's why I didn't mention the name. Another acting story, which sort of ties in with the Doctor Who at the moment, about Star Wars. Now, Mark Hamill, as you know, played Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. And it says here, I hope this doesn't set a precedent, Mark Hamill, who plays Luke Skywalker, says he was given pages and pages of false dialogue, which he memorised before being told they were fakes designed to keep the plot a secret.
That's really tough, isn't it? You should charge double.
The idea of keeping it secret from the actors as well seems a little
There's a lot of intrigue over that film, wasn't there?
Yes. So note to the producers of Doctor Who.
Not
I
to
can
do
keep
it.
my trap shut, right? The world's fittest man in the
Back to
Daily
sport.
Mail. Back to sport. Well, this isn't sport. This is Superman competing with the rest of us. I think he's dreadful, this awful man, going around making us all look unfit morons.
Well, he just eats lots of chips, that's the answer.
But after jogging across the Himalayas, he now decided that perhaps he ought to take on this quadrathon, which we've all read about, and he won it.
Well, if you eat lots of chips, perhaps you can be the world's most fit Doctor Who.
I think I'll avoid the chips.
Colin, thank you very much for coming in, though, to review the papers.
On the
Colin Baker.
Good
So the
Lord.
psychic player. You're a German, aren't you, Colin?
How did you guess?
I was told just before I came on.
Jesus.
Now, the funniest thing, I mean, we've not been able to do your full natal chart, but I would like to bring in all the Gemini stars watching us today, because, in fact, Gemini is one of the signs that's gone through a tremendous period. For instance,
Could be, right?
Uranus is the great awakener and is a very futuristic planet. That's opposing your sign. So really, the sort of job that you're doing now, going into Doctor Who, is absolutely fantastic for you, because it's going to allow you to do things you've never done before. It's a planet that's also terribly eccentric. So you'll be able to bring out all of that side nicely. Jupiter is also there, which is very lucky, and I should think you're going to make a tremendous success of the part, although you may get fed up with it more quickly than some of the previous ones. So it depends on how you're going to feel. You might be in there for a series and then buzz off. Neptune is also there, mystical, refined and glamorous, so that helps a lot of other things. I would generally say that for you and for all Geminis watching, this can be an extremely good period to open up to new things and get away from parts, images, characters you've played in the past and go into something new and very interesting.
Does that sound exciting?
Couldn't be better, could it?
No, it sounds perfect. If you said
Excellent.
Doctor was the last thing you should do, it would be very depressing, wouldn't it?